all the fun is. So who's there on iPhone if you want to announce yourself?
Looks like iPhone is an iPhone.
So welcome, Raj. It's good to have you. Welcome, Leela. So maybe we start?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hey, Hare Krishna. It's so good to see you. So while we open the second chapter, I guess we'd like to, we've just finished first chapter. So if you have any reflections, maybe we can just
What did you learn from the first chapter?
Yeah, maybe 2 reflections from the group that you want to share, that you remember, that or made an impact on you from the first chapter.
Because what you share will stay with you.
Can you maybe share the reasons that that Arjuna gives to Krishna
For not fighting.
for not fighting? Yes, go ahead, Christine. Oh, okay. Anyone wants to give it a shot? Some of the reasons.
One thing that you remember from the first chapter, what's going on in the first chapter?
Hare Krishna. I think one of the reasons Arjuna gives to Krishna is that he says families whose traditions decline end up in hell. And so he does not want to destroy his family.
Okay. Very nice. Anybody else? I guess we'll take 2 more.
Yeah.
Anyone thing that you remember from first chapter? And if you cannot remember anything,
Then we'll start over again. We'll do the first chapter again.
Raj, anything from you? Kavita, Vinati, Misha,
Is it too cold out there?
Tina? Yeah, it looks like.
Brain freeze.
Raj, you want to? I don't know if Raj is in the gym. Sometimes he doesn't share.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, yeah. Arjuna is saying to Krishna, like he doesn't want to fight the war by killing his own family members, friends, teachers, grandparents. It's not correct to be doing. By doing so, what he's going to get at the end of the war, he doesn't need the kingdom. He doesn't want any. And by doing so, he's making all the ladies, like by killing all the men in the family, because the ladies don't go and fight in the war. So then the Varna Sankramana will happen, and for so many reasons he felt very
Yeah, he didn't want to fight. Thank you.
he doesn't want to. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so there are 5 reasons that are generally given. So just so that you can remember for going forward. One is, like you said, family traditions.
The first one is compassion. I guess it starts out with compassion. Arjuna starts feeling compassionate, looking at everybody. And then from compassion, it turns to what's in it for me? What happiness will I get by engaging in this battle? Then his reasoning turns to fear of sinful reactions or karma. So he starts worrying about his own karmic reactions he will get. He will go to hell. And then fourth one is he starts worrying about the family traditions and the society, what will happen to the society and all that. And then finally, in this chapter, he will turn to indecision. So this is a sequence of his reasoning that happens. And it's not Arjuna's reasoning, but it's kind of our situation actually. We can find ourselves going through one or two or three or four of those situations. But normally in all of those situations, what's in it for me is always there. Other reasons may or may not be there, but what's in it for me is always there. So we'll start with the second chapter now. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Neshtiki. Chapter 2 is called Contents of the Gita Summarized. In one sense, the whole summary of the Bhagavad Gita is given in chapter 2, and then finally again chapter 18, the most important points of the Bhagavad Gita will be kind of repeated again in chapter 18. Sanjay Vacha Tam Tatha Kripaya Vishtam Ashru Purna Kulekshanam Visidantam Idam Vakyam Uvacha Madhusudana.
Sanjaya said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudana, Krishna, spoke the following words. So hard to imagine Arjuna, who's such a great warrior. Huh? He was so powerful that he was considered to be the foremost warrior in the whole world. For him to have tears in his eyes and all these symptoms of weakness, it's quite astonishing.
So these are contradictory symptoms, because Arjuna is full of compassion. When somebody is full of compassion, actually the heart becomes very wide and they don't feel depressed, because that's how that compassion is a formula for getting happiness, actually, real happiness. When we are compassionate to others, we feel happy and broad-minded. But here Arjuna is feeling this contradictory feeling of depression. And so it's a very, and when something like this happens, then we can understand that there is a conflict, very deep conflict going on between what is really right for somebody to do. And then this conflict will produce something wonderful if the person is introspective and takes proper guidance. So this kind of just occurred to me right now, actually, that these are contradictory symptoms.
Very nice. I like that point. And then I also like Prabhupada making this point here. Compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. And so this is actually, I think we already spoke about this example, but actually the problem here is that he's only, his feelings of compassion are misdirected, which means that he's only thinking in terms of the external body. And here Prabhupada's giving the example of a person who falls down in the water, in the river, and someone's trying to rescue just the dress, and he's thinking that that's enough. And I think we talked about this last time. So
proper compassion can only be understood and applied when we develop a proper conception of ourselves. So compassion actually follows conception. We need to have proper understanding of who we are. Otherwise, our compassion will always be misplaced, and it will produce contrary results. And
some of the ways in which this manifests is that when we see someone exhibiting these tears, we think, oh, he's so soft-hearted, he's so noble-hearted, he's always experiencing these feelings. But actually these feelings, if they're not coming from a proper platform, can either be a symptom of deep compassion or it can be the symptom of deep ignorance. And they both may externally appear the same, but it depends on where it's stemming from.
That's a very good point. So I guess whenever we see within ourselves or others, we can see different emotions. So we have to understand, along with the emotions or feelings, what is the proper knowledge, what is the foundation that the person is on. And if we are not in a proper foundation ourselves, then we'll misinterpret these emotions in ourselves and others. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Kutastva Kashmalamidam Vishame Samupastitam Anarejustam Aswargyam Akirti Karamarjuna.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy.
So this is the first time actually Krishna is speaking in the Bhagavad Gita, and it starts out with a very heavy chastisement of Arjuna in front of everybody. And he discards Arjuna's emotions of compassion and soft-heartedness as impurities. And he's asking him, how have these impurities come upon you? And they don't befit a man who knows the value of life. So indirectly he's saying that, Arjuna, you don't really know the value of life. You don't really know who you are. That's why you're feeling like this. And he says that these feelings will not lead to higher consciousness or higher planets, but to infamy. So it's quite interesting. And Prabhupada goes on to explain the meaning of Bhagavan Vacha, what Bhagavan means. We'll discuss that later, or we can discuss now.
I think we can just give a brief because this is a big topic.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a full session just on this topic. But because Prabhupada is actually going in such great detail, so we don't want to, just just bypass that. So we'll just quickly, share that this is the first time that we see this term, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. And this is actually the foundation of the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada says earlier on that if the Bhagavad Gita is just spoken by another person who has all the 4 defects, which means that we are prone to make mistakes, we can get illusioned. We make, what else did I say? Make mistakes. We
cheating.
We can cheat, and our senses are limited, right? So if Krishna also has that, then there's not much value in receiving this knowledge from him.
So it is not saying Sri Krishna Vacha, it's saying Sri Bhagavan Vacha. So Arjuna, it says Arjuna Vacha. And for Krishna, it says Sri Bhagavan. Sri means opulences, all spiritual opulences. So who's possessor of all opulences? Bhaga means also possessor opulences. So Bhagavan means one who possesses Sri and all the opulences actually.
And so this particular purport then gets into what is the absolute truth. How do you define? Because generally we use the word God, but God does not quite, explain the concept of the absolute truth or a param satyam that's given in the ancient Vedas. And then how that absolute truth can be understood in all different levels. So many times people have doubts about whether the absolute truth is this or it's that. And
light or energy or the person, or who's the absolute person? Is everybody God or am I God?
So these are all questions that people have, and it oftentimes it leads to a lot of like vague understanding of what the absolute truth is. But the Vedas actually spend a lot of time really delineating the nature of the absolute truth. And so in this purport, it is described that there are 3 phases of understanding that absolute truth. So all 3 are actually reconciled or integrated in that one understanding. And that is the understanding of the absolute truth as energy, or as an all-pervasive consciousness, also as the Paramatma or the super soul seated within every person, every individual, and also as Bhagavan, which is the personal conception, which is, by the way, the most difficult, inconceivable conception of God to actually grasp, is this Bhagavan. It's easy to grasp the Brahman or the first level of understanding because that is within the grasp of the mind and the logic. Even science actually gets quite close to talking about this Brahman understanding, that there is some energy which pervades, which is a unifying consciousness or awareness within the universe, right?
Yeah, this because we don't see God. What we see is we see energies around us, and we see everybody as limited. So therefore, it's very hard for us to accept the absolute truth as a person. Absolute truth. The word itself sounds very kind of what do you call that? The word is slipping from my head. Yeah. So the word Bhagavan basically says the 3 phases of understanding absolute is they're simultaneously existing, and one who depends on what one wants to relate to, what one can relate to.
And so based on, I don't think we should get into, this is a very big section. So we promise you we're not going to leave the section. We'll come back to it in a later, where we have a separate section which addresses.
In the 7th chapter we'll address this, or rather in the 4th chapter we'll address this concept of 3 phases of understanding God.
Okay.
Klevyam asmagama partha netattay upapadyate kshudram hriday dorbalyam tektothishta parantapa.
O son of Pritha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy.
So Krishna is calling Arjuna by different names. Here he's calling him as Parantapa, chastiser of the enemy, because just like he has dealt with great enemies and defeated them, so he should also defeat the enemy, great enemy of doubt that has arisen, and all this weakness of heart that has arisen in Arjuna, and fight that. And so Arjuna's compassion is completely dismissed here. Now, when Krishna dismisses Arjuna's compassion as impotence and weakness of heart, so now Arjuna is like going to use another, another weapon up his sleeve. This is his final kind of retort against Krishna. So far, Krishna was just listening. In the first chapter, you see that Krishna never responds to Arjuna's doubts and reasons. And it's like a child trying to convince the parents why he needs to get a car or something, right? And the parents listen, and say finally they give an answer. So this is so Krishna gives his answer that your compassion is all kind of whatever. So now Arjuna said, "O killer of enemies, O killer of Madhu, how can I counteract with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona who are worthy of my worship?" So now all those reasons are gone now. So when somebody changes their line of reasoning, which means okay, all those reasons are out of the window. Now this is my final reason. So he calls Arjuna calls Krishna by two names, very interesting names. O killer of enemies. So he first calls him a killer of enemies. Krishna, you are a killer of enemies. So you have killed all kinds of enemies, but have you ever killed somebody who was your grandfather? Have you ever killed somebody who was your teacher? O killer of enemies. You're not called a killer of your grandfather and your teacher. You're called a killer of enemies. And O killer of Madhu. Madhu was another great demon that Krishna killed. So he's substantiating that. O killer of enemies. One of such big enemy or demon was Madhu. So, but you're not known as killer of your own family members. Arisudana. So how can I kill? If you haven't killed, then how can you expect me to kill my own grandparents, my grandfather and my teacher, who are worthy of my worship? And in Vedic culture, elders were given respect. They were not even given a verbal fight, what to speak of a physical fight. So Krishna, now this is my final argument. You please accept this argument. Gurun hatva hi mahanubhavan shreyo bhoktum bheksham apiha loke hatvartha kamamstu guruni eva bhunjiya bhogana rudhira pratigdhan.
It would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood.
So here basically what he's saying is that Krishna, even if you don't agree with my argument, that okay, I should not kill my parent, my grandparent, and my teacher, I'm ready to just go back, and I don't want to have their blood on my sleeves, regardless of whether you agree or not.
It's kind of like almost like he's taking the shelter of renunciation.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't deal with all of this. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I'm just going to renounce everything.
Yeah.
Right? Just walk away from it all.
And then again, he's thinking about if they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with
But
blood.
so his renunciation is not complete.
His renunciation is not complete.
Because he's still thinking about his own enjoyment, even through that.
Yes. So after giving all these arguments, then Arjuna knows that his arguments are actually faulty and empty. So this happens to us, I mean, all the time, that we make so many arguments for certain thing, but still doesn't feel right? So this is what this is where he becomes indecisive. Nachetad vidma kataranno gariyo yadva jayema yadivano jayeyu yaneva hatvana jijivishama ste avastita pramukhe dhatra rashtraha.
Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live. Yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield.
So he doesn't know what to do now. Expressing his indecision, and he doesn't know what to do now. So now Arjuna comes to his kind of
This is a very
utter situation of helplessness, and now he realizes that behind the scenes he realized that okay, my reasoning is not taking me anywhere. I need proper guidance. I need higher knowledge, and that's why he speaks this verse 7, which is the turning point of the Bhagavad Gita. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava prichhami tvam dharma sammudha cheta yachreyashan nishchitam bruhi tanme shishyasteham sadimam tvam prapannam.
Now I'm confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So it's a very, very important verse here, because this is a point at which Arjuna finally, after going through the full first chapter and what, 8 verses, is it? 6 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, the second chapter, he finally like throws his hands up in the air. Now, this act of putting your hands up in the air and saying, I don't know, I need help,
I need help.
that is actually the turning point in everyone's life as far as spiritual realization is concerned.
So I guess most people, they don't turn their hands up in the air. Even if they turn their hands up in the air, I don't know. They stop at that point. I don't really know. I don't know what to do.
Maybe there's nothing to know.
Or there's nothing to know, or I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to
But
do.
to come to this point that I want guidance, and I'm ready to accept somebody as a teacher, as a guide, to instruct me. That's a very significant point.
Yeah, it's actually at this point, generally what happens is when people feel very perplexed, then they do, either they numb themselves out, which means they just drown themselves in some kind of addiction, and they say, well, I cannot figure it out, so I'm just going to do this, just not even, just push it under the rug, pretend it doesn't exist, and maybe it'll go away.
Or they work even harder, that okay, this is how the material world works, and I'm going to work really harder now to come out of these perplexities, to solve them.
And then the third thing we do sometimes also is that we say that if I don't know, then there's no one else who would know, right? So I reject even the option or the possibility that just because I don't know, is it possible that maybe there are some people out there who may know the answer to that, or who may have an understanding of that. So in all of these different, but Arjuna is not doing that. He's in a perplexed situation, and he's telling Krishna that I'm your disciple. Please now tell me what I should do in such a condition.
So Prabhupada's purport is very wonderful.
I think we can talk. No, I think we'll go through this purport as we do our presentation. There's many of these points we'll actually deal with, like Kripana and all that. I think
we'll stop here, and then we'll go through our PowerPoint presentation, which kind of brings out some of these points in a
right from here.
Yeah. Just give me a second, share it.
You have to turn on the sound, share the sound. All right.
So first 10 verses, it's basically I need help. G for Guru. Arjuna is accepting Krishna as a Guru. And then next 20 verses, Krishna will talk about who am I, who's the self, identity. And then the next 20 verses or so will cover with Arjuna's conflict again between the two duties. And the last 20 or so verses will deal with what are the symptoms of a person who is self-realized. Arjuna is asking some questions. So in this way, this second chapter gives us a summary of the whole Gita. We need a guru to tell us who we are, so that we can resolve our duties properly, find the right dharma for ourselves, and become self-realized. That's the purpose of Gita, to become self-realized.
So the first point that I think if you might have already picked on is that Arjuna is not able to resolve his own dilemma using his own mind, because the dilemma actually stems from one's mind. You cannot use your own mind to understand your own mind, right? So then what does one do? And so in the one of the first ingredients of knowledge is actually humility. And that's what we are seeing here with Arjuna. Just to come to that point of saying, I don't know, for a conditioned living entity requires tremendous amount of humility. But this humility, here is a little quote, which is very beautiful, that it's the mother of giants. One sees great things from the valley, only small things from the peak.
So if we are artificially perched up in our ego, and that, okay, if I don't know, nobody knows, or I don't need to find out, I can figure it out on my own. Then we don't really find a solution to problems which are much bigger than us. So Arjuna's conflict is this decision making. Normally, there are 4 platforms from which we make decisions. The first platform is indecision, which comes from this mode of ignorance.
So just to back on, just to give a little perspective, there are these 3 modes that we're going to talk about in great detail. That's coming up in the Bhagavad Gita. Mode of ignorance, mode of passion, and mode of goodness.
Right. So how we deal with things, how we view life. One is from this total I don't care mode of ignorance, darkness, without proper knowledge, and it kind of permeates in all different aspects of our life. And one of them is this decision making. So indecision, indecisiveness, procrastination, those are all fall under this realm of indecision. The other one, the next one is acting with great passion or under the influence of this passion, where it's called indiscretion. So we don't care, just do it. This mentality of I need to get this at any cost. It doesn't matter. That's indiscretion.
That's what we're seeing with Duryodhan.
Yeah.
Duryodhan has indiscretion, which means he doesn't, I mean, to think about it, he is the one who's going to be the greatest loser in this whole thing. He's off, he's not in his center point. He is not acting from the place of dharma. Plus he's going to lose everything and everything he has. He doesn't care. He has no pause button.
No pause.
No pause, right? So that's indiscretion. That's mode of passion. And then the G is mode of goodness. When a person is, there are many qualities of mode of goodness, but one of the essential attributes of goodness is that there is a calm, equipoised nature, which introspects, which pauses, which thinks about the pros and the cons, and then makes a decision, a very sane decision.
And one is not just thinking about oneself, but one is also thinking about others, the whole universe, and one's place in it. So that's introspection coming from the mode of goodness. And even that may not be sufficient to sometimes resolve issues. So one needs to then go to the next higher level of consciousness, which is inspiration, which is S means spiritual consciousness. So spiritual consciousness is where one can receive higher guidance from within, from Guru, from the teachings, and also look at the world from a very factual point of view, and integrate all these different knowledge streams to come to a decision which is such decision causes well-being for oneself and well-being for everybody else.
It's kind of interesting when we look at these words. Spect means to see, right? So intro means to like go inside and to try and see something. And inspiration is to, you have the word spirit there. So you're actually connecting with your spiritual essence. And first coming on a spiritual plane, and then from that place of spiritual awareness, then one acts. So, and that for to do that, one has to actually go beyond all of these three modalities, which is ignorance, passion, and goodness, and reach the spiritual plane.
And that's one of the primary themes of Gita, is to help us rise above these modes and then go into the spiritual realm.
So who are we? Why should I even consider that I need help? Because most of the times our ego sort of just expands and it becomes like this big, massive mountain. And we think we are, we're
most important person. I'm the center of the universe.
I'm the center, and I know it all. Why do I need help? And so this is a little video. This is actually an experience that one of the students of Prabhupada had with him, where Prabhupada could detect that his disciple had some pride, and so he told him that, hey, you are sitting here, right? He was in Los Angeles at the time. He said, you're sitting here. No, he said, this earth. Where did he start again? Do you remember?
He was sitting in Los Angeles in the temple.
Well, where did Prabhupada start that conversation? Did he start from the micro and go to the macro? No, he started on the macro. He started on the macro, that this solar system is just part of unlimited
universe.
There's so many universes,
right?
And out of those universes, there's one universe,
which
right?
Is the smallest.
Which is the smallest. And in that universe, there are so many planetary systems. Out of that so many planetary systems, there's one planetary system, the solar system. In that, there are so many planets, and then there is one Earth planet. In that Earth planet, there are so many countries, and out of that, there is this one country, North America. And out of all those places in North America, so many states, right? In that, there's this one state.
And then one state, so many cities, and then the city itself is so many buildings. And that Los Angeles, there's one small building, and out of that building, so many people are there, and there's this insignificant Tamal Krishna.
Yeah, he says he's one, and he's thinking that I'm so important. So same thing here. This is also going. I think this goes from micro to macro.
Yeah.
watching it actually, and I've seen this before.
So this is very interesting. In this one, every dot is actually a galaxy. So Milky Way, such a big galaxy, is appearing as a dot at 10 million light years. Andromeda galaxy is one galaxy. Ursa Major is another galaxy. So who are we actually?
So what is the value of my problems?
Yeah.
If I am so small, how can my problems be big? So like it really gives you a perspective, and I guess that's really what we want, right? A perspective, so that we can really see the reality. Most of the times we live in an unreal condition where we think I'm so big, all my problems are big, and everything that I have is big. But it's just like if the earth is just it's not even visible. So that is or even worse, we have certain spiritual teachers. They'll come and they'll say, you're actually God. You just don't know it. You chant a mantra and you can realize the fact that you're God. You are that. You are that ocean. You are that absolute, whatever, supreme, consciousness. No, the living entities are actually just very, very tiny.
So this is sometimes when we hear the word that I need to
keep an eye on the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the mind rebels at the thought of taking guidance from somebody, especially the word guru or accepting somebody as a teacher. Maybe for various reasons we have been cheated, or there are false teachers around, whatever it is. There is a whole kind of rebellion in our head. Why should I take guidance from anybody? But whether we like it or not, we end up taking guidance from so many experts. Like if you have a medical problem, we take guidance from a doctor who's expert in that field. If we have a financial problem, we take help from a financial expert. If you have legal problem, we go to a lawyer who's an expert in law. So we're constantly taking guidance from somebody.
And we do need that guidance. I'll give you a little example. We've been doing some exercises looking at YouTube videos for a while now, and we thought, oh, we're doing so well. We can do these yoga asanas or whatever, and we can, and this and that. And then I've been having some ankle and knee problems. So we found a chiropractor and a physiotherapist right here in Mayapur. And the the 2 sessions that we had with him, we were like, oh my goodness. So this is how this asana is supposed to feel like. We had no idea. And so, in any situation, even the smallest thing, when you have a person, then the experience of that knowledge is a whole other, it's completely different. Versus
something that was maybe very difficult or not even desirable becomes something very
easy.
Very easy.
So we'll just quickly watch this. We won't spend too much time, but this is Richard Dawkins, who's actually, quite a proponent of empirical knowledge, right? I mean, that's what he stands for, rationality, empirical knowledge. But he talks about, how we need experts.
Yeah.
And without experts, you can't really have any knowledge.
Among the reasons that I heard for people wanting to vote for Brexit were, well, it's nice to have a change, and, well, I preferred the old blue passport to the European purple passport. These are for voting for Brexit. The day-googled question in Britain was, what is the European Union? Experts, you are the experts now, so ordinary vote Britain out of the European States. And so at one stroke, the British people who had no, and they did, by an elite surgeon to cut you open. You want to.
I think it's this one. This is the amazing one.
Finally tonight, the latest installment in our series of essays. Tom Nichols, author of the book The Death of Expertise, shares his humble opinion on the demise of experts.
A few years ago, a mischievous group of pollsters asked American voters whether they would support bombing the country of Agrabah. As you might expect, Republicans tended to support military action, while Democrats were more reluctant. There's only one problem. Agrabah doesn't exist. It's from the animated Disney film Aladdin. Only about half the people surveyed figured this out, and liberals and conservatives gleefully pointed fingers at each other. For experts in foreign affairs, however, there was no way around the alarming reality that so many Americans had a well-defined view on bombing a cartoon. I'm one of those experts. I teach both civilians and military officers about national security affairs. In my career, I've advised the Pentagon, the CIA, and political leaders from both major parties. Increasingly, however, lay people don't care about expert views. Instead, many Americans have become insufferable know-it-alls, locked in constant conflict with each other while knowing almost nothing about the subject they're debating. How did this happen? How is it that people now not only doubt?
So this is actually an important point, because this, in the realm of spirituality, is the most common thing. People think that just by perhaps just sitting down, quietly, one can figure out the entire spiritual domain, when we are not even a tiny speck on the map.
Yeah, just
Right.
just meditating on nothingness or emptiness, or just using our mind as the expert to figure out things. I can figure it out, or whatever you feel like is the right way to do things, or to make spiritual progress, or to learn about spiritual truths. When we spend so much time and energy in learning about everything else, paying so much amount, going to college or university to learn about things, then why we have this tendency to just kind of discard it when it comes to learning about the real
Spiritual,
self.
yeah. The spirituality is something that is always up for debates and discussions, and self, we try to like become like a self-made guru, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or someone that can fit, just use. So the Bhagavad Gita actually does not say that. It's like, no, we do need a line of experts who have actually walked on this path, who have received this knowledge from a proper source, which is accredited, which is validated by all the other experts. And then we can put our trust there, right? And then we can test it out. It's also not based on blind faith, by the way. Receiving guidance from an expert doesn't mean that one has to close one's eyes and just believe whatever is being told. But what it does, it actually saves us money and time, and we also get an opportunity to try out this knowledge ourselves and see it for ourselves, whether it works or not. So it's both empirical, but it's also taking guidance. So the two come together in the process of bhakti.
Yeah, taking guidance, taking inspiration, learning from. We don't have to repeat the same mistakes again, right? And we can benefit from the experience of all these experts who have spent their time and energy.
Hours and hours every day.
Yeah.
It's hours and hours. I mean, all these teachers, like we talked about one teacher, I think 2 weeks ago, he took 10 years out of his life, meditating for what, 10 billion, 192 rounds is like what, 20 hours a day or something. Yeah. So these are people who have written such, they've written and shared all their experience.
An elite anesthetist.
We can use that, and then we try it out for ourselves. And in that way, it is also empirical knowledge.
So Arjuna is kind of, he's done accepting himself, his mind as a guru, and he wants Krishna to take charge.
So here is something I really think we should keep a track of time. Do you know how much?
What time is it now?
Just 1 second.
8:11. Okay, so we have 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. Okay. So yeah, so here is an analogy that is actually often used, which says that what is the chances of one coming in contact with a teacher who can help us navigate this sort of very difficult terrain of spirituality, to distinguish what is real from the unreal. It is described that the chances, because the living entity is actually known to go through countless lifetimes. And so for a living entity to finally get to a point where he or she meets a teacher is as rare. First of all, it's very rare to get a human body. That's the first rarity. It is described that there are, how many species?
8.4 million.
8.4. Today I'm reading something with the numbers.
8.4 million species, according to the Vedic text. But anyways, we know there's so many species. And to get a human birth, and then to get the opportunity to meet a bona fide teacher who can teach us about who we really are, and realize our full spiritual potential. That's called double rare. So this is, the example is given of this sea turtle whose surface is only to this every 100 years to the top of the ocean. So what are the possibilities? If, for example, if a donut-shaped float was floating on the surface of the ocean, what are the possibilities of this turtle coming up and putting his head through this turtle?
Through that
yoke.
That yoke. It's a, one couldn't even. I think there is a little, I think something that someone has actually done that mathematical. I think we looked at that math.
Yeah.
It's quite mind blowing, but suffice it is to say that it's a very, very rare occurrence. So for a living entity to finally get to that place where he or she says, all right, I'm ready to learn, and the teacher, there is a teacher to teach as well, is actually extremely rare. And it happens because of mercy.
Yeah.
So this is actually now kind of taking a different turn where it's described. Prabhupada actually talks about Kripana. So I'm not sure if we should just pause here or you want to finish this.
We can finish this section. The analogy.
The miser and his
Arjuna basically says that because of my miserly weakness of my heart, I don't really know. I've lost composure. I don't know what to do. And miserliness is described as a symptom of somebody who's not fully aware of their real potential, because everybody is given this intelligence, this high intelligence, especially in this human body, to inquire about higher truths. And when we don't use that intelligence for that purpose, but use it just for our bodily pleasure and happiness and in this world and getting comfortable in this life, then we are like a miser who has so much potential and so much intelligence given, but only a tiny amount of it is used just for miserly pleasures, actually. And that's a miser.
The opposite of miser is a brahmana, someone who's very broad-hearted, broad-minded, who can actually see the wealth or the potentiality that he has been given and he utilizes it. Prabhupada gives a very nice example that why is it that the judge actually gets more money than, say, an ordinary administrative staff who's also sitting in the same court. He's not getting as much money as the judge is. And Prabhupada says it's because the judge has been given a higher responsibility. So that's why the reason why we've been given all of this potential, this intellect, our just this everything, all the resources that we've been given is so that we can actually inquire into the nature of the absolute truth.
And go out of this material world.
And to find.
It's like the turtle going through that, putting his head through the yoke. It's a rare opportunity to get out of this material world. So
another key concept in that particular verse that we just read was this idea of Shreyas versus Preyas. And Arjuna actually uses this word that, tell me what is actually beneficial for me.
which is Shreyas.
Which means that there's so many good things that may happen to us through the course of our life, but that's not the purpose of us, looking at spiritual life, right?
But that's not the way we make decisions in our life, just looking at what feels good or what will get me some good results or resources or money or fame or whatever. Those are all called prayers, which means it kind of seems like it will give me happiness. But Shreyas is looking at the bigger picture
And looking at the long term.
and the real thing.
The real thing. And actually there's a study that that we looked at that we're going to talk about later, but just wanted to mention it, which says that, they've actually done a study and they found that somebody who actually broke his leg, for example, or got his legs amputated, versus a person who won a lottery, right? After 6 months or whatever, I think it was 6 months, I think the level of their happiness is identical in both the cases, which means that good and bad, even though it may seem like good is good and bad is bad, but in the ultimate sense, it doesn't really amount to greater happiness for either of them.
So it's just chasing after good and trying to avoid bad as our factor for decision making in life. It's not going to take us anywhere. We'll just come back to this average of like everything is same.
Yeah, it's the same. So Shreyas is where we want to be. Shreyas means that it's the real deal.
Yeah.
It's the real deal, something that's going to sustain, something that's everlasting, something that is not going to be subject to all these conditions of life, ups and downs of
The
life.
graph that you see here is actually depicting prayers, which is the mundane life just going up and down, but averages out. Shreyas is something going beyond this graph. And Arjuna wants to go beyond this graph, actually. That's why he's accepting Krishna as the guru. So Arjuna finally surrenders to Krishna.
And then there is a little poem, which we are not going to read right now. We'll just maybe share this in
our Mighty Network.
Mighty Network. So you can then read this poem. It's a beautiful poem. So yeah, we'll stop here and now we'll take questions, reflections, and comments. Guru Shankar, any thoughts from you?
I guess the first time I sort of understood why I got into Bhagavad Gita in the first place. So maybe this is the first class I realized the ensure the discipline. So when Krishna came into taken the position of Guru. So that's something which sounds interesting, and So I'm just still in the infancy. So all that I'm trying to do is to maintain the discipline to get into this. So long way to go to reflect and give my thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your voice is a little, yeah, choppy, but yeah, thank you. Yes, Amrita, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, Hare Krishna. So I was just thinking that how, in this particular situation, because, Arjuna was in the company of Krishna and he did recognize him as a bona fide guru, hence he was able to come out of the situation, get the right knowledge, and also, ask the right questions. But for, most of us, I think most people go on their entire lives, not really having that association or, being in the right company to be able to even get to that point. So, just thinking about that, it made me realize that to be able to even recognize a bona fide guru like you as as a disciple also have to be bona fide.
That's such a good point that you, bona fide disciple, meaning somebody who's really recognizes that he's perplexed, he needs answers.
And who's willing to go the full length.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we lack in modern times is patience. I mean, as we have been working on our Instagram page, one of the things that we have been told again and again that people's attention span right now is not more than 10 seconds. And so we scroll through information, and we consume information so fast that it's hard for us to actually stick with something and just stay with it and struggle with it and try to go deep with it. That's something that, and I guess we are being entertained, to such a, to such a, at such a global level.
I guess we're too addicted to prayers.
We're too addicted
and
to
then the prayers is like reduced to 10 seconds.
10
Give me
seconds.
10-second prayers.
Tell me quick what it is. But the process of bhakti requires, the process of any knowledge actually requires us to sit with it and think about it. And even though the text may be dense, the information may be dense, to kind of try to, get through it and allow that knowledge to enter. So yeah, it's very, very difficult. And that is the nature of this age. This age is an age of mass distractions. And so how do we then, so yeah, it is hard, but at the same time, it's been made very easy. Considering this about the way we are, the great teachers in our line have actually spent time. This is what Vedvyas did. Vedvyas at the beginning of Kali Yuga figured it out. Hey, people in Kali Yuga are not going to be able to read so many Vedas, Puranas, Vedanta Sutra. Let me give them something in bite-sized 10-second attention span, which is 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita. So he brought it all together into this FAQ. It's like, okay, just take this and you're okay,
So anybody else like to make any reflection? Christine, anything from you? Uni?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, sorry, I'm on my phone today and it makes it hard to chime in, but I was thinking about the movie The Social Dilemma. I don't know if you've seen it, the documentary about social media. You might like it because it is about all this false information and how hard it is to focus, but also to trust. And I think because we get so much false information, and then with the algorithms, how they just continue to replicate the things that we already like. It's hard to interrupt that and get through to some truth. And then even if we do see some sort of truth, then how do we know if we can trust it? Because there's so much out there that's false. Even somebody's resume could be false, or you can forge so many things. And so aside from just having these encounters, then to know to be able to discern and know what is actually real and true and what we should trust, I think is also really hard.
So
Such a good
nice.
point.
We're gonna watch this documentary,
If you
Social
can,
Dilemma.
Yeah, you can send a link to
Yeah, I would love to do that because it's true, because sometimes even for us, we spoke to somebody who's an expert in this field and he's like, you gotta this is what people are, watching, and this is forget it, we cannot, this is not who we are, we're just gonna do what we know. And And yes, of course, we try to make it as interesting, but the world has become such where our attention spans are just this, and we have enough stimulation that it's hard for us to pause and introspect, right? Think about stuff. And like you're saying, how do we know what is being created and what is real? Even authenticity is being created now.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Aditi, any thoughts from you?
I was just remembering the 4 quadrants, or the 4 modes that you shared, and it was indecision. Oh my goodness, I'm blanking right now. Forgive me. Indecision, passion,
indiscretion,
and indiscretion. And then there's the mode of goodness. And just what really struck me is that you don't override any of those 3 lesser modes to get to the mode of goodness. You actually combine them all. And that just, I don't know, like thinking about making this whole process easier, it just makes it easier for me when I think about, okay, all these different parts of me that maybe are not as refined, or or maybe a little lazy. It's like, it's okay, I can work with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, just going over them actually.
Yeah.
And I guess
we all have that.
Yeah.
We all have those moments, and then we can pause and we can introspect, and finally we can receive inspiration. And that's what we're doing when we're reading the Bhagavad Gita. We're actually trying to connect with our spiritual essence, and that way act on that platform in a place of inspired work.
So anyways, in this section, we see Arjuna finally kind of coming to a point where although he's indecisive, but he makes the right decision here. It's very interesting. He's indecisive at what he should do in regards to the war, but in that moment of inspiration that comes to him, he makes the most right decision of surrender to Krishna. So from complete indecision and chaos in his head, he comes to this most wonderful point in his life where he takes the best decision of his life. And that decision is actually helps everybody, including us. Misha, go ahead.
On this point only, so you said when you're indecisive, it's best to turn to somebody, is what you're trying to say, right? And surrender yourself.
Yeah. Well, in this case, we also have to know, we also talked about this in our last chapter, that where is our ladder? What is our ladder leaning on? So, part of it is, of course, where do we turn for guidance? So there are so many ways that we can get guidance, and they might be all useful. But in this case, Arjuna knows that, the best kind of guidance that he's going to get is, of course, from Krishna, who is, the Supreme Person, who's free from all these defects, or a representative.
Somebody who is expert in spiritual knowledge and spiritual practice and realization. And how do we detect such a person? Arjuna is going to ask that question towards the later half of this chapter. So we'll discuss in great detail. How do you find such a person from whom I can take spiritual guidance?
And someone who's not going to cheat us.
Cheat us, yeah. So Tina, yeah.
Do you have anything more, Misha, you wanted to say?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Tina, and then Kavita.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tina.
While I was thinking about finding the guru, sometimes I believe, like, even I've been listening Bhagavad Gita since a childhood, and somehow I know the stuff in my head, but it's like going circle and circle and circle. And finding guru, it's really hard to trust anybody. But I feel always in my life that if I'm sitting in front of the God, if I'm talking to the God, my inner voice will talk to me. Like the God itself within me is guiding me. Is it true, or we need to have a guru?
Well, right now, we already, because we are reading the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. So we already have a guru, that's Krishna. Then we are reading the commentary, the writings of the previous teachers, specifically Prabhupada, who has written down all the writings. He's combined the writings of all the previous teachers, and he has brought it together in one book. So we already are actually hearing, and then us coming together and sharing our realization. So there is that personal guidance also.
So the short answer is that Krishna is there in our heart guiding us, but we also need somebody who's physically present who can guide us because they can see what we are doing wrong, what we're doing right. Just like if you want to learn violin or get your body in shape, you need somebody who can physically be with you or guide you. So that's the
otherwise sometimes you're right, you're absolutely right that Krishna is seated within the heart, and as the super soul he is actually the ultimate guru. He's called the Chaitya Guru. But because we are not completely, our head is so cluttered, so sometimes we don't know the voice that we are hearing within. Is it the voice of my mind or is it the voice of that supreme person within?
And also one of the aspect of getting spiritual knowledge, as Arjuna is demonstrating, that is surrender to his guru. So because we have this whole puffed up conception of who we are, we don't surrender to our mind. We are always surrendered to our own mind, but not to anybody else. So when we accept a physical guru, we get the opportunity to kind of surrender our mind or the
there's a tangible place to sort of put our mind and say that I'm willing to follow. But also this is a well placed, and there is a lot of empathy that we all have this fear. How do we trust a person? It's very, very difficult, and so we always choose to go like, okay, it's just between me and God. That's perfectly fine. That's why we have to have before we even talk about guru, it's kind of premature at this point to even think about a guru, because right now what we need is just knowledge and practice. We have to first get to, just like Amrita made such a beautiful point, that in order to get a bona fide guru, one has to first become a bona fide disciple. So that's what we are doing. When we are ready as authorized, bona fide, sincere disciples, then the guru will come.
Yeah, I guess it's not about getting a guru for some whatever reason. When we become a sincere seeker of the absolute truth, then Krishna sitting in the heart, he will present that physical manifestation of the spiritual guru is actually a physical manifestation of Krishna himself sitting in the heart. And to find a genuine guru, when we have the desire, then Krishna will make it happen.
And we have to know how to recognize a real from a false. And so that's what we are doing right now. So what we are doing right now is just the right thing. And then when we are ready, then it'll happen if it has to happen. Hope that helps, Tina.
Yes. So basically I understood, like, going through this journey, it will lead us to our own Krishna in our heart. And once we find out, like, our selfish voice, is that the inner voice or is it really Krishna?
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Am I right getting?
Yes, that, and also we will still continue, because that journey to actually distinguish the inner voice from the voice of Krishna is a very long journey. So to get to that point, we need help. Even after 25 years of our practice, both of us can attest to it. We still need help. At any point when we get stuck, we pick up the phone and we call our teacher and we say, okay, how do we understand this now? And we are continuously taking guidance, because that's how we can refine our understanding, and that's how we can actually learn. This is an art of learning how to be able to hear that voice of Krishna within. So to get there, we need assistance. And even
Thank you so much.
Yes, Kavita. And then I think Kavita, go ahead.
And then I think we can make it quick now because it's already 8:30.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Like I was relating everything, but this finding a guru is one part, and trusting is one thing. And I was thinking, being in this spiritual knowledge, but still we feel so ignorant, and this materialistic realm is so strong. We are struggling in between introspecting and compassionate about that push and pull which is happening regularly towards material realm and spiritual realm, and demeaning yourself, the complexities. It's so difficult, and clearing the knots. You will be halfway through that. Half knowledge is making you really like, I was just like relating everything, and really whatever you spoke just felt like going through everything, and finding you is like finding guru is like really a bona fide blessing. But we don't know what is moksha meant by. We will be like thinking always really bodily conscious, but we don't know how that after they say just in the words, you are not going to fall in the cycle of birth and death, and you don't know how it feels, that happiness and compassion once you reach moksha. Really, like relating it to it is very difficult. The way you have shown the video of first explaining to the from macro to the micro and going from micro to the macro, it's really we are so feel so stupid, and we are not even a speck in this universe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I
we'll
guess
we'll end it here. I think we're going way over our time.
well,
And
aren't they supposed to chant?
yeah, so
Amrita.